He is one of the most well-known characters in the history of Marvel Comics. That's right, we're talking about the Hulk, aka Bruce Banner. Hi, I'm Nando, and in this series, we take a character from Marvel Comics. We talk about their background, their power set, their personality, and we give you some reading recommendations. This week we're doing something a little different. So the subject of these videos has been largely dictated by cards that are entering Marvel Snap. However, the idea of the videos was always to do characters that were somewhat unknown. So you'd see a card come up and you go, hey, who is Doom 2099? And then you'd watch our video. However, because Marvel Snap is crossing over with Marvel Rivals, they've decided to do a couple of characters that I'm pretty sure everybody on Earth knows. And characters where at least their early history and the vibe of the character is pretty concise. So I wanted to try something different this week, and then something different next week, and we'll see which one works better. So today, instead of going into the origins of Bruce Banner, the Hulk, we're going to instead do a sort of book club where we dive down into the best runs of the character, and specifically some of the more recent ones in the last 20 years, because the Hulk has been around since the 60s. He's got decades upon decades of comic history to look at. But I want to look at what you could say are three of the best Hulk stories of my lifetime. And these runs not only focus on the Hulk, but tell a story of Bruce Banner and how he relates to the Hulk. Some of them even manage to evolve that relationship in interesting ways. So okay, we're going to start with reading recommendation number 1. It's called Hulk Gray. It is a 6-issue limited series from 2003 written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Tim Sale. It's part of Marvel's color-themed series, which also includes Spider-Man Blue and Daredevil Yellow. And even beyond those, Loeb and Sale have worked on some classic comic stories like Long Halloween or Superman for All Seasons. So this Marvel Colors thing was a prestigious line of books. People were excited about it. And each one attempts to retell a part of that hero's life, usually with a new perspective at it. This story is framed through Bruce's conversation with Doc Samson. It's a therapy session because in the comics, Doc Samson is a therapist, and he is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe too, played by Ty Burrell, in one of those roles where you're like, that's not who that is, but it is. That's Doc Samson. Now, he has yet to show up with long green hair and big muscles, but there's always time. And if you've been following the channel for a while, you would recognize Doc Samson because he is in what I say is one of the best comic issues of all time in the second X Factor run, an issue called Examinations. And that's what a Doc Samson book tends to be, at least the good ones, or a character pouring their heart out to Doc, he's asking questions, and we learn about what they think they are. Hulk Gray is a great introduction to Bruce Banner's origin story. If you've seen the movies, a lot of it you're familiar with, especially some of the iconography, Hulk hiding out with Betty in the cave. I love Tim Sale's version of the Hulk. One of the things that changes a lot depending on how people draw him, and something that was very present in early Hulk and has sort of changed recently, I'm not sure when this happened, was he used to be just a big square. He didn't have a tight superhero waist, he was just a big lumbering monster. And I think Tim Sale in Gray really captures that. This story is the conflict between Bruce, now the Hulk, and Thaddeus Ross, who I would say, it's hard to say exactly who the Hulk's most significant villain is, because obviously there's the leader, who is the opposite of Hulk, there's Abomination, who is Hulk but worse, but I think General Ross, even before he became the Red Hulk, because of the personal connection to Betty, is the most interesting villain to pair Hulk against. The interesting theme that this book brings up is the idea of hate. Thaddeus Ross obviously hates the Hulk, but Bruce also hates the Hulk, and hates himself for being the Hulk and for making the Hulk. It's interesting because this book also examines the idea that like maybe Bruce Banner kind of wanted this. It's like, what do you want if you're making the Gamma Bomb and if you're running out into the Gamma Bomb? Was Bruce expecting that he would be killed, and did he think that was what he deserved in that moment? Or is this the natural next step in creating a weapon of war like the Gamma Bomb? Another thing that's interesting is Doc Samson knows that the story Bruce is telling probably isn't exactly right, mostly because it involves Iron Man, a character that was never present in Hulk's origin story, but a character that in universe, if these guys both existed, would definitely have run into Hulk one of these days, because Tony Stark is a military contractor, and Thaddeus Ross would want someone to track down the monster that stole his daughter. Iron Man's a pretty good candidate. So yeah, Hulk Gray, nice short issues, very fun use of color, especially the contrast between the black and white present day and then the colorful flashbacks. That is reading recommendation number 1. For number 2, I'm going to talk about a lesser known story called Tempest Fugate. It came slightly after Hulk Gray. The first issue was released in 2005. It was written by Peter David with art by Lee Weeks, Tom Palmer, Studio F, Randy Gentle, and Virtual Calligraphy, and it runs from Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 77 to issue 81. So it's a short story, 5 issues. And because I'm doing this as more of a kind of book club and less of a recap, I'm not going to describe the ending of this book because the revelation of what's actually happening is kind of interesting, but I'll just say the plot centers around Hulk's journey to a mysterious island where he faces a bunch of challenges that force him to confront his past, and maybe they're real and maybe they're not. But the part of the story that I'll kind of spoil, and what makes this story so interesting in my opinion, as part of the overarching story of Bruce Banner, is it recontextualized his origin. We learn that the Hulk wasn't created by the Gamma Bomb, but was always present in Bruce Banner's mind, something that would later be explained as part of his dissociative identity disorder. But I think it's very important because this changes the relationship between Bruce and the Hulk. Even as a child, the Hulk was the devil on Bruce Banner's shoulder. And even as a child, when Bruce Banner tried to deal with that and tried to stop the Hulk from fighting or destroying things, he inevitably got blamed, which eventually leads him to General Ross. Like Peter David, again, a guy who wrote those X Factor books I love so much, really liked playing with that idea of what a dual identity means and taking characters like Multiple Man in the later X Factor Investigations run. And I wasn't expecting to talk about X Factor so much, but I do think it's interesting because this book has some parallels to what I think is my favorite issue of any comic, which is X Factor Volume 3, Issue 16. And that story is about Jamie, the Multiple Man, trying to reclaim personalities, including one that in this situation has become a priest. And because of this, Jamie learning something about himself. And as I sort of have to do, even though honestly it's not really my kind of book, the third reading recommendation for this has to be Immortal Hulk, which is debatably the most significant Hulk story of the last 20 years, tied maybe with Planet Hulk, World War Hulk, and those, which we've already talked about in previous videos, otherwise I'd probably covered that here. Although those books don't really focus too much on Banner because he is Hulk throughout the entire experience. Anyway, Immortal Hulk. First issue comes out in June 2018. It's written by Al Ewing with art by Joe Bennett, Roy Jose, Paul Mounts, and Corey Petit. And this redefined Hulk as a true horror character, playing with the idea that he's not just a monster, he's something else, and something that, as the title suggests, cannot die. This is a story about Bruce confronting his past mistakes and putting his relationships with his father in the spotlight, something we haven't talked about really in any of these books, and something that had been done in the past, but not to this extent. The art is also gorgeous, but at times very upsetting, so, warning there. It's also a quite long book. I don't know if there's a stretch that I would recommend as the 5 or 6 issues. I guess you could kind of say the first 5, but I don't think that gets into what's exciting about the Immortal Hulk story. But the story also manages to tie in other characters from Hulk's past, other villains, allies. So I would say between these 3 stories, you'll have a good beat on who the Hulk is. If you want to read a more recent book, Hulk by Philip Kennedy Johnson, that's pretty good. He's got a lot of monsters from Marvel lore. But again, Hulk Grey, Tempest Fugate, and Immortal Hulk. Which Tempest Fugate, I forget if I mentioned this, means time flies. It's Latin for that. So again, talking about how Hulk has changed. Okay, now like I said, we're talking about Bruce Banner this week because he's being introduced into 2 games. He's being introduced into the collectible card game Marvel Snap and the hero shooter Marvel Rivals. Let's talk about Marvel Snap first. In both games, Marvel Snap and Rivals, the gimmick of the Bruce Banner-Hulk relationships come from his stance change. In Snap, Bruce Banner is a 2-1 that reads, when you end a turn with unspent energy, 25% chance to, all caps, Hulk out. I think it's pretty clear what this is going for. An unspent energy is an idea that goes through all of the Hulk cards, She-Hulk, Red Hulk. So it makes sense that Banner would also play with that mechanic. This is going to fit really nicely into a high evolutionary deck. And if it pans out, I think a 2/12 stat line is pretty worth it. I'd say the main synergy for this card is magic just because you want as many rounds as possible. But it's going to work well with She-Hulk, Infinite, guys like that. This is another character that General Ross will take advantage of. I think the main villain of Hulk here is going to be Red Guardian, because knocking the text off this Hulk makes the card worthless. There are variants for the Bruce Banner card. The Ryan Kennard Eduardo Mella variant shows Bruce mid-transformation, while the Marvel Rivals variant, which is the Spotlight Cash, shows Bruce with sort of the spirit of the Hulk behind him. I think this is notable because it's the only Marvel Rivals Spotlight variant that looks very different from the base art. I think a lot of the Spotlight variants in this season are kind of boring. If you look at the Luna Snow, those might as well be the same card through a filter. And I'm not saying that's what they are, but I'm saying they don't look like creative reinterpretations of the character, which is so annoying because in the game, and this is not true for Bruce Banner, in the character page, all the characters' icons are what will eventually be the cards put into Marvel Snap. However, when you hover over those images, you get a way more dynamic pose for each character that would make a much cooler card. If the magic card looked like this instead of this, 100% that would be the one I would use. Anyway, there's also a Brett Bean variant for Bruce Banner. It looks pretty cool. Haven't seen very much of his art yet, though he just had the Beast and Devil Dinosaur 2-pack in the store. Marvel Rivals, the Bruce Banner-Hulk relationship is pretty well represented. You start every round as Bruce Banner, which I know some people are kind of annoyed at, and your ultimate is fully charged and you transform into the Hulk. His abilities are leaping, punching, charging up a shield, and he can double Hulk out and turn into an extra big version of himself. Banner also, because this is kind of Overwatch and he's kind of diva, has a little gun and a bomb so he can protect himself and charge up so that if you lose your Hulk charge and turn back into Banner, you're not completely defenseless. There are some fun stories on the internet of people playing only as Banner, really annoying their team. One thing that the Marvel Rivals lore of Hulk really focuses on is his connection to a belt, which he created and uses to automatically transform into the Hulk without having to be angry. And this belt is very visible on the base model for the Hulk. It seems like the Marvel Rivals version of the Hulk invented this so that he could control the transformations, and while it was not perfect, it did kind of work. You do see these clashes between Hulk and Banner, and then this new form of Hulk, which is called the Monster Hulk. Now, I will say there's something in the lore that hasn't been quite revealed yet, but the very basic description for the Hulk references a time stream entanglement that turned the missile base that he was working on into a demonic battleground. So this Hulk has some connection to demons and monsters, which you could say is maybe influenced by the Immortal Hulk story. We don't know yet. As far as costumes in Rivals, we have a gray Hulk version, which makes sense. And then there is a green Scar costume, which is reminiscent of the Planet Hulk story. Either way, Bruce Banner is an interesting card. It's something that Snap has not done yet, but it's a mechanic that I think makes sense for the character. And I think it's a character that in Rivals has a fun mechanic, which yes, it borrows from what Diva does in Overwatch. I think it adds a unique spin on the character. So that's Bruce Banner. Next week, we're going to do something very different. As always, thank you to Bernardo Tellish for helping me put this summary together. And if you thought the Hulk was incredible, wait till you get a look at this video's sponsor, Nebula. You know Nebula, it is a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of YouTubers helped to create. It focuses on giving the creators more power to make the cool stuff that you guys already like and giving you guys a better experience for watching it. That means all my videos go up ad-free. Some of them are early. The Nando V Movies videos are early. The Nando Cut videos are like a little early, but they're not as early because they're like a thing that happened yesterday usually. We curate different video lists based on what people are talking about. So if you're watching that new Dune show, for example, and you want to watch some videos about Dune, we've got a bunch of those. We make that really easy to find. You can just watch that. We also have Nebula Originals. So these are all kinds of things. We've got like a pro shoot of a play by Abigail Thorne. Patrick Willems has made a Christmas special. His full-length feature film about an evil coconut. He's got a new short film coming out with a cast full of actors like Zach Cherry, who fans of this channel, I mean, you know him from so many things. Perhaps he has been in Severance, you love Severance, Fallout, but I mean, realistically, a good portion of you know him as the guy who tells Spider-Man to do a flip, or the guy who was taping the Shang-Chi fight. But either way, he is in this, and that is something you can only watch on Nebula. Tom Nichols just made a documentary about gerontocracy, about how boomers have changed the world and government, and is it good, or is it even really a thing? A subject that has only gotten more relevant since this documentary came out. We have so many other cool things I think you guys are going to love. You'll find out about them soon. And I always say, a year of Nebula is a steal at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you use the code TheNandoCut at checkout, you can get a year of Nebula for $36. It's a great deal. Check it out. Go to go.nebula.tv/TheNandoCut. Use the code TheNandoCut at checkout. I guarantee you'll find something cool you're going to like. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.